little bit more at a time. Frog is complete. Got that all nicely polished. And of course we got the button on here. So one thing I didn't do yesterday that I want to make sure I go back and cover is that we left this nose here a little bit on the sharp side. So I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand it a little bit like this. So I'm reducing the height, but I'm angling my sandpaper like this, so that I'm tipping the very point back a little bit, and then rounding it this way as well. And so this is really very, very slight modification, and the big part of this is you just don't want this to be easily caught by something. Just going in and out of a bow case all the time is a potential to break this nose off. And like I said, this tip armor's a little bit tender. That's probably the weakest part of this material, is that it's just a little on the tender side. So, all right, so that is done. So now let's move on to doing our branding here. So I like to do several brands on my bow. One in the normal spot, so I'm going to put a pencil mark right at the back of my frog, and that's where I line up my brand, the outside of the brand, not the actual letters themselves. So they're in maybe about 3 centimeters, but it's just an easy way to make a place. I'm going to mark the front of my frog all the way forward, and let's take that off. And then I make a mark here, come on, at 75 millimeters, so that's the length of my winding. And then I'll make a mark on both of the side facets. So a few years ago, I've been thinking about this phenomenon or problem with bows, is that you can take a valuable bow, play it a lot, wear a hole in it down to the mortise. There's only 2 millimeters of material at the most. And once you get to that point, the value of this bow is gone. And if we did an equivalent on a violin, let's say if you wore down the neck of a violin, and then you said, well, the violin is worthless. Well, that doesn't happen. You just put a new neck on it. And many instruments have many necks over time. So my thought is that hopefully one day we'll wise up and say, well, we can replace the butts of a bow. It's a very easy job to do. You're winding it up most often with silver on it, so it can't come apart. But what you do is you lose the brand. And even though other brands wear away, if you still have a good brand, then for me, you shouldn't lose the value of the bow. And this part of the bow does so little bending that it's not adding much to the overall playability of the bow. So what I'm doing is I'm putting brands on both sides of the stick. Sartori put a brand underneath the winding. So did Victor Fatigue, a few other makers as well. Some kind of sneaky guys, they were making the bow for somebody else who was going to brand it, but they branded it underneath the wire. You've seen that a few times. So I'm going to put a brand in the usual place. brand up here so you can see my last name Moore sticking out from behind or from underneath the winding, and then twice under here. So probably a little overkill, but it's my bow, so we're fine. Okay, I need my alcohol lamp, Kate, sorry. And I need the lighter, which is up there too.
The itty bitty one?
The itty bitty one. Okay, so I've got my, gonna heat up my brand here first. So it's gonna take a few minutes. Must have a little water in my alcohol here. Something's popping.
So if other makers were looking for brands, where would you recommend that they go?
So there's a company in Cleveland called Superior Stamp. They also go by the name of Stamp Yours. I think their website, one of their websites is Stamp Yours. They can do any font, any size that you want. You can get it so that it's just a little, like a postage stamp one like this with holes in it. Or you can get a big old chunk of steel or brass. They'll also make them that are attached to soldering irons. So a lot of guys use those for bridge stamps. So they're pretty handy, and I'm sure the few people watching right now have had them make brands for them. So I'm going to go ahead and take my brass brush here. I recommend trying to not use any steel to clean your brand with. So once I get it hot, then I'm going to go ahead and brush off any of the shellac that might have gotten stuck from my last brand. Get down inside the holes here to get that nice and clean. Okay. And we'll warm it up enough and we'll test it here on the on my little block of Pernambuco. Kate wants people to suggest what color of thread they'd like to see on this bow, so we'll see how that goes. I have my my favorite, so let's go ahead and see how this looks. Ooh, just about right. So now I'm going to take my lighter, and butane's pretty dirty, so it'll put a lot of carbon out. So you can also do this with a paraffin candle if you have one handy, but the lighter does a pretty good job of carboning this up. So you have enough black mark, and so we're gonna try one of these brands underneath the winding here just to get started and see how well we do. Yeah, I think I might put my glasses on. This is always one of the more nervous things, you know, you make a bow and you do a beautiful job and you hope you don't mangle the brand. Make sure it's going the right way.
So something you told me
Okay.
when I first made my brand is the longer the brand, the more difficult it is to get it straight on the facet.
Yeah, if you've got you know, super long name, good luck. You look at bows like there's a shop brand that you'll see every once in a while that's George Gamunder and Son. It takes up almost the entire butt of the stick. They must have had a jig to line things up because that would have been impossible to get in there. Clean it up again. And a little carbon.
So Tony said he likes the cobalt blue dark green or just a regular black. And Dennis Braun suggested that you do green, white, and red.
Yeah, I'm only gonna do one color and the tinsel here. That's I know I've done a lot of interesting things over time, but I'm gonna be somewhat conservative on this bow.
Sean also suggested green, white, and red. Just one.
Yeah, grab this bow that I just finished up, the Piquant model, so I
Where's
can
that?
show it's in the bow case.
The bow case, which is
Oh, sorry, it's over there.
okay.
One thing you really want is a really nice, fine, brand that makes your letters nice and crisp. You want, I guess you can do whatever you want, but I like it to see it when the letters are kind of on the finer side. The brand can go in a little bit deeper without just mushing the whole butt of the stick. You want the letters to be burnt in, but you don't want to burn the surrounding area of it either. So you have to be, just think about those things.
Tony asked, is the brocade single or double wrapped or braided? Are you talking about the tinsel?
The tinsel is just the single wrapped. The triple twist stuff, or what David calls the antique French, I think maybe just a little bit on the tender side. So, I think they're beautiful, but I also want customers to not feel like they've got to replace them. Every 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, last brand here. This is the one that counts. Let's see if I can do it. Got my practice brands in. One of the things you can notice with old bows is you can see often where somebody landed their brand and then rocked into, and once they got it lined up. I'm doing it kind of the same way, but often a brand is deeper on one side than another. All right, there we go. It's in there. So I go down and then I rock it back and forth 6 times, and then I rock it this way 6 times, and hopefully end up with a nice crisp brand. I like my practice brands better, but that's the way it goes. Okay, done with that. Okay, so we did have some conversations the other day about balance, so let's just go ahead and, just for fun, we'll see what the balance is. So the frog's all the way forward, buttons all the way forward. Now I'll just balance it on my finger here. Okay, there's my spot. So I know people measure their balances from 2 different spots. So from the thumb projection to the balance point is 18.4, and if you measure from the total length, it is 25.8. And for me, this is where people are holding the bow, is where their thumb is. So it makes sense to do the balance point at the thumb, at the end of the thumb projection. But yeah, it's just whatever you're used to is fine. All right. So when we write that down, it was 18.4. Okay. So, okay, so here's this winding. Let's see if Kate can zoom in on that enough so you can see it. So this is with the triple twist tinsel, and this is a silk thread. 3 different silk threads that I hand twist together. And so there's 1 white and 2 greens together to get this sort of skip dye look. And you can play around with that a bit to come up with some different.
You need to have your hand right next to that winding so the camera can see it.
Okay, so it'll zoom in.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so I've played around with a bunch of different colors and combinations and stuff with that. So, okay, so I'm still going to do my 75 millimeter. So I'm going to start by putting on 3 layers of tape. We can do this painter's tape here in Ohio. I know some people, if you live in a really warm climate, the stickum on the tape does kind of break down in warm climates. So you may have to do thread or something like that instead.
Is there anything you would suggest they avoid?
Well, the thing that makes me crazy is that this is temporary. It's going to get removed. Please don't glue it on, especially the thumb grips, with contact cement. Tight Bond 3, no. Yes, it'll stay on, but if you love your bow, you're going to hate it when you see your bow come back and there's knife marks all over the stick because somebody couldn't get the thumb grip off. So that might change your mind a little. On the Tight Bond 3, that is.
So why are you winding it 3 times?
Okay. Just it's the thickness of the tinsel here. So let's go back here too. It's important to talk about why I'm doing a thread wrap on this. So this bow is right now is 54. It was 54.05 grams. It put a little bit on with this tape. So if I put hair in it, typical rehair is 5 grams. So that would bring it up to 59. So if I put silver on it, it's going to be 64 grams, and that'll be too heavy. So we want to go ahead and do either a tinsel winding or an imitation whalebone winding. So for me, aesthetically, these thread windings are much more attractive. So I think probably the winding we're going to do plus the thumb grip is going to add about 1.5 to 2 grams. So let's see what we end up with. Okay, so now I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to cut off a strip here about a little bit more than a millimeter-ish or so. And then before I put this on the bow, especially a bow that has fairly soft finish, even though this won't mar when you touch it, it's still on the soft side. So I'm just going to take and put it against my apron here and get some little fuzzies or dust or whatever on there so it's a little bit less sticky. See, it won't even stick onto that block. Okay, take the tape, the ruler again. And put that at 75. 75 millimeters is sort of the standard length, but there's no hard and fast rule that says that you have to make it 75. You could make it 80. A lot of the old French bows, if you get a chance to see something that's so fresh it still has the original winding on it, sometimes they're 80 or 85 with no thumb grip. So it's again, it's one of those salt to taste things. Okay, so I've got that done. And so I've chosen this lighter green because it is an absolute perfect match for this eye.
Can you tip it towards us a little more?
So let me turn this around so you can see if you can see the colors match up pretty well. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take our little platform here and take the silver. When I get these spools, I take my little jeweler saw and make a nick in here so that you can store your wire like that or your thread like that so you doesn't get all unwound. Okay, same thing. Usually these have a saw cut in them already, knife cut in them. And this is silk. This is from a company called The Beadsmith. I think I got this from Amazon. Pretty sure it's Amazon. Then there's another company here that is Champion Silk Incorporated. And you can get different thicknesses. So I have sizes E, F, and double F. So each one is going to go up in size. Probably the F is ever so slightly smaller in diameter than the tinsel. Let's see if we can measure it here. Go. So the tinsel is 0.36. This F size, don't want to squash it, is 0.22. It's you can collapse it so it's a little bit thinner. Let's try the FF and see what that size that is. This is about 3. Again, super hard to measure because you can squash it pretty easily. So let's go with this F here. So to get started, so I take my tinsel and I wrap it around twice so that I can hold on to it as I'm turning this first turn, and I actually pull pretty tight on this until I get to the bottom facet and I cross over my tail end. I'm going to go around one more time. Okay. And believe me, this is much easier when you're doing this on an octagonal facet instead of a round facet. So now that I've got those first 2 turns on, I can actually take this and I can pull on it. And if that first turn is just a little bit loose, I can snug it up a little bit. So now I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut this off. So let's see if we can get more light on there. And then I'm going to pull the silver off. Okay, so now I get this little bushy end here. And I'm going to take my glue. Crazy glue is perfect for
And
this.
that's the thicker glue. It's
The
not
thicker
your
glue,
thin
yeah,
stuff.
like I said, the crazy glue is really good for this. Okay. And then I'm going to take my knife and just snip off that little piece of silver. Okay. So now I'm going to start doing my pattern here. So let's see, what are we going to do? Trying to wind this nice and tight and have all my windings up snugly together. Okay, that looks pretty good. You're going to have little bitty gaps that we'll deal with when we're finished winding it. So now I'm gonna. This is one of those somewhat uncoordinated things.
Lots of sleight of hand.
So wrap that around so we can hang on to it. So now I'm going to take my green and I'm going to roll over the top of the silver. Now see, I'm holding on to the green already with my thumb so I can reposition my other thumb. Come around and cross over. I try to have this joint between the two of them in the center of the. I lost it. All right, one more time.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, this is getting this started is a bit of a challenge.
And filming it isn't easy either.
I did this bow for an exhibit for the Violin Society, which was my 4G bass bow, and I had two rolls of tinsel and 2 threads going at the same time to make a pattern, and it was a challenge. Okay, here we go. Okay, and we're crossing over, roll it around. Okay, now we're crossed over the silver, go around it one more time. Keeps the tail end out of the way. Make this as nice and tidy, and I'm scooting the thread together with my thumbnail. Okay, so now we got the green established. Now I want to glue this down. So clip that off, and then I'm gonna take my scribe and I'm gonna unwind the silver a little bit.
The silver?
Unwind the thread so I can make it lay down flat like we did the interior of the tinsel.
Now, I guess there are some winding jigs out there.
Well, I don't think you can do this on a winding jig. So, okay. All right, so I want my green here in this pattern. It's going to be a little bit narrower than the silver. I'm going to come back and put down 2 turns of the silver. Okay. Come back, pick up the green. Trying to, again, maintaining that transition from one material to the other on the bottom side. Try to get right down the middle of the bottom facet so it's nice and hidden. And sometimes it's hard to tell exactly if you've got the same number, so I'm just going to count them here. Eight. So this one more time. Okay, now we're going to pick up the silver again. Squish these together. Pull my tail end back this way so it stays in the middle of the facet. One more, I think. Okay, looks like it's even. So now I'm going to take both of them and wind them together. It's kind of hard to keep the same tension on both of them at the same time. And let's see. I'm going to swap these around. There we go.
What happens if you need to stop in the middle of a winding and answer the phone?
Well, I don't answer the phone. But you can just put a piece of tape over this usually and keep on going later. But it never fails. FedEx needs a signature or something like that happens about the time you start your winding. You want to make an extra effort here to keep everything going straight. It's a big pain to have to go back and nudge stuff around to make it look nice and straight. Okay, so I'm going to do something here a little different. I'm going to put a ring around this right in the middle. So what's my middle? That's about 37 and a half, right? 30, 38. 32 and a half. 32 and a half. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead.
You also have 5 millimeters that's going to be under the thumb grip too.
Yeah, so I'm just going to make a double winding of silver here, and then I'm going to go right back to going with my green. Sometimes when I'm repairing old French bows, you can see little knife marks under here, and I think some of them were, taking their ruler and they were just making a pattern, and so I've tried to make some copies of that just to see what their patterns might have been. Some of them were pretty it looked like they just had blocks of different colors and stuff. So, just interesting. Okay, coming in here to the home stretch. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead now and do one more turn. Now I'm going to end my silver. Leave that on the bottom facet. Knife. Unwind it again. And now I'm going to put a piece of tape right here. So in case this spins out of my hand, I don't have to go back and redo everything. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to grab my rehair thread here, pull off about a foot. I'm going to make a little loop. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Everybody cooperate here. Okay. I'll make a loop. I'm going to do this on a different facet so I don't disturb my tail end of my silver. And just roll over the top of my loop. All right. Cut that off. Now I'm going to take my scribe point here and scoop up my tail end and pull it through the loop. Come on. Okay. And then pull the tail end through. And everything is secure. Okay, so now I'm going to glue this down so it's not going to get loose. So be real careful. If you use a real thin CA glue, it can migrate into your finished wrap that you don't want to cover with your thumb grip and stain it, and you won't, there's nothing you can do about it.
It'll change the color.
It'll change the color. See how much darker it is. So now I'll just trim off these two end pieces here. Okay, so now it's time for my thumb grip.
Let's see if we can get a closer look at the wrap now.
So, okay, so one more thing. I'm going to take my burnisher, a little nose grease for lubricant, and I'm going to, with my burnisher at an angle, I'm going to burnish this down, and it kind of flattens everything down, polishes up the silver. It eliminates any of the little gaps you might have had with the tinsel. I think it makes it a little less abrasive to the hand too. And now I can take off this piece of tape here. Can you grab that thin blue glue for me, Kate?
Yeah.
So, because we put the little fuzz on the tape here, we didn't leave a mark anywhere on this. So now one more thing I'm going to do to help secure this winding is never fails. I'm going to take a little glue. I'll just pick up a little dot of glue and put it right at the end of the winding, and it just wicks right up into the silver here. And that will help keep, players occasionally, if they're really laying their bow over on its side, they might catch the string, catch the winding with the string, and that'll just help protect that a little bit. So, all right, we're going to move on to doing our thumb grip. Okay.
Nick Walker asked you burnish the wire the same way.
I do burnish the wire as well, yes. And when you do the burnishing of the wire, it just makes it look a little bit crisper, and it polishes it up too a little bit.
You just have to make sure that your burnisher doesn't have any little...
Yeah, you want to take, when you buy these, they are not very polished. So I actually go through and just take sandpaper and just keep going through it and getting it so that it's any machine marks are gone, and just keep going through it until you get it down to a super high polish, just like you were doing at silver, silver ferrule or something. So it won't leave marks. If you do that, it won't leave marks on it. So, okay. So I use a polypropylene block to do my thumb grips and my cutting my bow blocks, my rehearing plugs on it. And the great part about this is once the surface gets eroded from knife marks or chisel marks on it, you can just take your plane and plane it smooth again. You gotta take some sandpaper to it to give it a little bit of a texture, but this works really well for doing leather. And so, where did it go? I had it out here.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, so the leather I'm using is called Russell's Oasis. It's from a company called Talus Online. You can buy a whole big skin. You can also get this from Bowworks. I think he sells it in strips. The price comes out to like 10 cents a thumb grip or something like that. So
what animal is it from?
this is goat skin. So I love the look of lizard skin. You can still import lizard, but the problem with it is as soon as you cut the tag off of it, you have no proof of what type of lizard it came from. And one of my friends had a violin sent back from Canada, and when customs opened it up, they saw that it had a lizard thumb grip on the bow. And so Fish and Wildlife took over, and it took him several months to get his bow back. So I don't think it's really worth putting the lizard on. Just know that it can be a problem. Okay, so I've got this is a double beveled knife. This is 3/4 inch hock knife blank. And you want this super sharp. So I'm going to put a bevel on here that's about the width of a facet. So it's somewhere around 4 or 5 millimeters long and right to a very feather edge. And then I'm going to take the leather and I'm going to wrap it around the stick. And I'm going to make a mark here at about that same 4 millimeters. Okay, put it back on my block here and that's how sharp that is. Just tears like a piece of paper. Okay, so I put another bevel on this end. Okay. So I'm going to look and see that if I'm square, so I got to cut more off of this side.
Ian Christian said he's watching this as he carves the fluting and bass top.
All right, fluting and a bass top.
And then we also have Carlos Brazil from Curitiba, Brazil. I don't know.
Cool.
I don't think I pronounced that right at all.
Okay, so now I've got my my end bevels. They're equal. They look like they're square. They're parallel to each other. So now I'm going to put a bevel on one side, making sure that it's perpendicular to the ends. And this bevel is about half the width of my end bevels. So it's a steeper cut. And this is something that you can do as a personal taste. You can have it longer or narrower. It means how much the leather, the radius, I guess, of how the leather rolls around. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I am just going to cover up the end of the winding there. So I'm going to have to cut a bit off of this. Okay, cut off another millimeter or so. Okay, that's good enough, and then you can wrap them end to end like this and check and see if they're the same length, because they will need to be. Okay, we're looking good. Okay, it's ready to go. So then I'm just taking my tight bond here.
Not Type on 3.
Not tight bond 3, please. Come on. Remember, it's a temporary joint. It's one of the things I like to tell bow makers is that think about this. You may be the best craftsman that ever works on your bow. So you can imagine you really do want people to be doing simpler things or easier things on your bow. Okay, so now I'm taking my leather and I'm putting the end on it in the middle of one of the corner facets. And that would be, so here's the bottom facet, it's the one away from you. And the reason I do that is, my thought is that your thumb, if the joint is lapped this way, then your thumb is constantly pushing the joint together, not trying to peel it apart. Okay, so we're going to let that sit for a few minutes and dry. So I'll put my knife away so I don't get hurt with it. Okay, and I need to find a rubber band. Have one over here. I got it, Kate. I got it. Okay.
Have you
Take
ever had your bows come back with bad repairs done to them?
Yeah, I've seen really horrible tip replacements. Like I said, knife marks all over the stick.
On your own bows?
On my own bows. One of them had the nipple completely removed for some reason. Don't know what that was about. Some severe hand wear. Somebody played the bow and never thought about putting a leather over the butt of the stick. And of course, really bad marks on the stick from dragging it on the string. I guess that's part of normal wear and tear. You'd like to think people are a little bit more thoughtful, but it's a tool. So I'm gonna cut up some more paper towel here. Okay, so we want to protect this thread from getting any glue in it. This is a trick I learned from Roy Quaid, he's a bowmaker from Canada. So put a little tape over the thread, and I'll take a bead of glue, put it right at the bottom and around the edges, and a little bit in the middle. So I'll take my first piece of paper towel and just squeeze the glue out as I roll it around. I don't want to pull on it because I don't want to pull this loose. This is when you're doing a lizard, this is really hard because the lizard's so stiff it doesn't really want to stay put when you bend it. Okay, take a third piece here. Roll it around, squeezing the glue out of the ends here. Okay, next one, you're going to put a little universal solvent on it. Just clean up whatever glue was left. Roll it around like that. We'll take the piece of tape off. Push that back down. Now you can take a piece of, so it's a rubber band, and you can wrap it around here and let that, push that down tight, and it does a great job of kind of firming up this leather. And you want to make sure you don't have any gaps because they'll show in your finished work. A little glue squeezing out right now. We'll clean that up in a minute. Okay, let that set. Clean up our mess here. Be careful, you know, your tinsel will get these little loops in it, and you want to be careful not to just pull the loops out because you'll leave a dent in them, and you'll see that in the finished winding, so you want to try to avoid that. The antique French product is really bad at twisting up. It's sometimes it just gets almost knots in it when you're doing a thumb grip. Okay.
Of all the tinsels, which is the worst to use?
Gold. Gold's really bad.
Is that because it's a lot more
I think
tender?
it gets wound on a spool, and it gets wound on another spool, and wound on another spool, and I think each time it gets twisted more. I think, I don't know for sure, but so
Maybe someday we can go to
okay.
a factory that makes tinsel and we can see how it's made.
All right. Clean that one more time. Okay. You can also roll it like this, and that'll help make that joint. The joint just literally disappears when you do that feather on there. So
Let's see if I can.
that's
zoom
really
in on it.
nice. Okay, so we've got our wrap on here. Let's go ahead and check our balance and see how much this tinsel changed anything. So it was 18.4.
We also have the weight too that we need to check.
Yeah, we'll check the weight. So So it's now 18.1, so we moved it 3 millimeters, and here it is 23.3. So what did I say? 18.1. 18.1. Okay.
So what is it? What is the average balance between what and what?
Oh, so for me, for a finished bow, this is sort of what I think most people are looking for. I always do it in inches, but I'll try to get your metric here. So we're at 7.5. So that's 19.1 to 7.25, which is about 18.4, maybe something like that from here, from the thumb projection. And so I would say that's the sort of the sweet spot. And then the further you go away from that, you either end up with a bow that's really head heavy, or head light, going the other direction. And so the variables on that are going to be weight too. If you've got a really light bow but it's head heavy, it's not going to feel so head heavy. It's going to play pretty well. That bow of the Picat bow that I like so much of Elmar Oliveira's is like 56 grams, but it is very head heavy. But it plays, obviously it plays right. So anyway, so let's go ahead and check the weight here. Let's see how much we changed it. It was what was it, 43.3, is that right? Okay, so now we're at, it was 53.03, and now it's 55.7, so we gained 2.7. No, 3.7. I should have written it down. I didn't, sorry. Anyways, now it is 55.7. So if I put in a 7-gram rehair, it's going to be like 50 or 61 grams.
You
so
mean
that'll be good.
5-gram rehair?
5-gram rehair, yeah.
You don't want to put 7 grams in a violin bow?
No, 7 grams for cello.
Oh.
All right, so we're ready to do a rehair.
All right.
So let's break, and we'll be back at 1:15.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see you then.
See you in a bit.